Cool. All right. Can everybody see my screen all right?
Mhm. Yep, you're good.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you everybody for joining. My name is Jarrell Francisco. I am the County of Santa Barbara's Zero Emission Vehicle Specialist. I'm mainly focused on supporting the deployment of clean transportation, including electric vehicle charging stations, shared mobility such as micromobility. And today, through Electric Ride 805, come today to create a discussion around micromobility here in the Central Coast. We're going to have three presenters. We're going to have the City of Santa Barbara talk about deploying and planning for a local micromobility program in the City of Santa Barbara known as B-Cycle. After, we'll have a little bit of insight into operations. From B-Cycle, we'll have the operations manager, Joanne, come and talk about what it's like to operate the B-Cycle program. And then finally, we'll have our local metropolitan planning organization, SBCAG, talk about potential funding opportunities to potentially use to deploy and potentially expand micromobility, beyond the region of Santa Barbara into the neighboring areas. And then at the end, we'll have a panel around 30 minutes to kind of dive deep into any questions that anybody has, and any questions that anybody had for planning or deploying micromobility, or any questions regarding the presentations. So with that, let's kick it off. But before we kind of begin, just some administrative items I kind of want to talk about. We're gonna have, I know some of you might have questions, so we'll have the panel at the end, which will provide some time for discussions. And then at the end of each presentation, if time allows, we'll have maybe 1 to 2 quick or questions allowed from the audience. You all should be able to unmute yourselves on your panel on the bottom of your screen. And then we'll also be recording this presentation, and we'll send out an email of the recording after this, along with updating our website, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then, as a follow-up to this, in that same email, we'll ask for feedback on the survey, on future topics that you guys would be interested in learning about. So with that, let's get a little bit into what Electric Ride 805 is. Or sorry, here's a brief agenda. Kind of mentioned it before, but yeah, we'll be having three different presenters. A little bit more about Electric Ride 805. We're a coalition of local governments and nonprofits here based in Central Coast, dedicated on accelerating the transition to clean mobility for all communities here, mainly through supporting collaborations such as open stakeholder meetings or potentially planning and grant applications to support, again, the adoption of clean transportation in the region. Just a little bit of a plug about our website. We have a new updated website where you could find resources about transportation here in the Central Coast, all the way from EV charging to electric vehicle purchasing, and also provides access for you all if you're interested in potentially getting on one-on-one support for purchasing an electric vehicle. So if you or someone you know is interested in getting into clean transportation, feel free to come to our website at Electric Ride 805. And so before we kind of jump into the City of Santa Barbara's presentation, I kind of want to jump into why we're talking about micromobility, because if you've attended our presentations in the past, we've talked mainly about electric vehicles, with regards to funding programs for EV charging incentives, or incentives for electric vehicles. But we're kind of transitioning to a new emerging type of transportation, which is micromobility. There's a bunch of benefits to micromobility, which is why we're talking about it today. It potentially can enable local governments to reach their climate action goals by reducing transportation emissions and vehicle miles traveled. Also can potentially reduce reliance on single occupancy vehicles, thereby freeing up some parking demand that I know can be a very contentious issue. It also reduces personal transportation costs, which can increase people's mobility to access work, transit connections, or other economic opportunities such as jobs or education. And then finally, the the maintenance to active transportation can generally be lower to when compared to single occupancy vehicles. If you look at the cost of maintaining a highway versus bike lanes or whether they're class 3 or class 1, then overall, biking in general or micromobility is just fun. It provides you a way to get out, experience your built environment in a different way, and provides more opportunities to live a healthier life. And so, with that, I will pass it to Jessica Grant from the City of Santa Barbara. We'll be talking about piloting B-Cycle.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jessica Grant. I'm the Supervising Transportation Planner with the City of Santa Barbara. And I wanted to mention that Sam Furtner, Mobility Coordinator, who is very instrumental with helping us get this pilot bike share program underway, is just on vacation, but hopefully maybe for future chats, he can be here in the future. But I'd love to talk to you about the bike share pilot program. So next slide. And I wasn't sure completely of the audience today, so some of this might seem a little basic, but we'll dive a little bit into the details. And I do know that Joanne Burgess will be talking on behalf of B-Cycle. I'm really here to really kind of show the regulator point of view, that type of thing. So what is bike share? It's a point-to-point transportation option, and of course, use to reduce traffic, reduces parking demand, provides access to key destinations, is affordable. And really, from when you think of biking, it's like trying to eliminate those trips where it might be like a little bit too far to walk, but also too close to drive. So that's where bike share, we really felt, comes in key, especially when we were evaluating it for our city, because so many things are very walkable and sort of easy to get to. So next slide. So yeah, kind of going backwards, the council direction we received was to regulate for shared mobility and to implement a bike share program. And I have a timeline on the next slide, but it's basically started right around circa 2019. Again, it's had been something that we have been wanting to implement in our general plan circulation element for a long time, because it really is a sustainable form of transportation. Next slide. So yeah, this all happened where we had a mobility ordinance that passed in 2019. And kind of if you think back to circa 2019, there was a lot going on, I think, in the mobility world. There was lots of the rogue scooter launches happening. And then kind of, yeah, bike shares were popping up all around our state and across the US for that matter. But our council, yes, wasn't interested necessarily at the time. And we had some regulations in scooters, but to not do a scooter program, they directed us to specifically look into bike share. And at the time for the scooters, yeah, we didn't think that there was the kind of safety issues with the scooters themselves. So that's why it was put on pause, and it's still put on pause today. And so anyway, we put out an RFP, and there were 3 applications received of bike share operators. We definitely knew for a city of our size, we have very small working groups, so we knew we couldn't do it on our own, that we definitely wanted to contract out and contract with somebody that it was not their first rodeo, that they have done different programs elsewhere in the United States. And so ultimately it came down, and it was a lot of fun to meet with the different operators, and of course to do all the testing for the bikes, because we wanted something that looked good but was durable, and we had told the operators to bring their finest bikes as we trialed them. But quickly found out that some of the finest bikes were not at all very good. So that was kind of red flags for some of them. But ultimately, we ended up choosing B-Cycle. At the time, they were a subsidiary of Truck Bicycles, and really from a biking standpoint, and that we were really attracted to the type of bike that they were proposing. And in this case, we were open to electric fleets and non-electric fleets, but they had an all-electric fleet, which again was pretty enticing for us. Santa Barbara is generally fairly flat, but there's definitely some topography to our area, and so we were interested in that. And then another thing too was, do you go to a docked or undocked system? And we spent a lot of time on that, and ultimately we thought that the docked system would be more promising, and as we are in this trial phase, it has been extremely nice that it's been a docked system. So yeah, fast forward, we had basically 3 years to pilot the program initially. And a lot of the first part of the program was getting all the necessary permits. Part of Santa Barbara is in the coastal zone, and it's something that Bike Share was not exempt from coastal review because we did have the dock system. And so it took a while in the permitting, and I can go into that a little bit later for questions, but we did get an appeal of the coastal development permit. So meaning we had to take it beyond just our city level to all the way to the Coastal Commission. But ultimately we did get the permits for that, and the rest of it was just kind of our internal review. So you can kind of see from that 2019 to actually when we launched. So it was a couple of years really, just to kind of get the program up and running. And of course, all of that during that time obviously was the pandemic that had some, yes, complications, but that was another reason for some of the delay. But it was also very critical to have, I think, a bike share system during that time, and as we got out of the pandemic. And then kind of fast forward to May 2024, we went to council with an update, and we were able to extend the program for an additional 5 years. Next slide. So this is just a photo of what the bike looks like. Again, there's a lot of bike share bikes that are, if you think of just in different areas that you've visited, that can be kind of clunky. And so really what was nice with B-Cycle, they really worked with us, and also for the rack designs too. Again, bike shares are across the state, a lot of them in college areas that more look like a college setting with the kind of series of racks, and again, just with the Santa Barbara style, we wanted a more minimalist approach, and so that is the rack that was used. There's a few different types. But anyway, as far as the pilot program, it was to have 500 docks, approximately 250 bikes in the queue. Of course, upon launch, we didn't start with that number. We had to kind of evolve through the years. And then we had just recently secured grant funding for some additional docking stations and bicycles to for underserved areas in the city. Next slide. And so there was a lot of things, like from an operations standpoint, we did spend a lot of time and continue to spend time just of where to locate all the dock areas, and obviously looking at key destinations. And then also making sure that the rack locations are not blocking a pedestrian access. So next slide. So you can kind of see this is maybe a typical right of way in our kind of downtown grid area. So it's something that this is like a typical what we would do for a spec sheet for installation. So these happen to be diagonal rack layout. And so basically for every location, we have like a mock-up of what that would look at. And then we would also have the traffic engineering team to make sure that locations and sight lines and nothing was blocked. And of course, making sure that on the sidewalks that pedestrians have a through zone that it was not blocking. Next slide. So just a little bit of metrics to date. Again, the goal initially was to have 500 bikes. So we have slightly over about 549 docks, and then 272 bikes in service at 87 locations. And let's see, as of the end of May, so from the launch to the end of May 2025, we've had over 6,000 trips with over 2.1 million miles traveled. So again, it's really, really cool to see those numbers. Next slide. This is sort of spatially, this is taken directly from B-Cycle's website, but it will show you at any given time of where the dock location is and if there's a bike available at that particular dock. Next slide. This is something that we did in some of our updates to the various committees, like the Transportation Circulation Committee, Planning Commission, and then subsequently City Council. But it was just to show that heat mapping for a few months' time, just to kind of see, well, where is everybody riding that are using the B-cycles? So obviously with the white being the hot spot, and it would make sense, just our downtown and waterfront is the highest active transportation neighborhoods in the city. But you can also see it's spread out too, where people are going into the neighborhoods as well. Next slide. This is just some point data from GPS showing that the bike share bikes are being used way beyond the city limits. And so it really screams regional program. I think it could be really successful. Again, when we look at transportation systems, you don't look in a tunnel that, okay, everybody stops as soon as you hit a city limit line. No, that's not the way that our area is laid out. So it's very easy to get to Carp, to get to Goleta, of course, unincorporated county. So again, it's something that we've over time have been trying to meet with the regional partners, and I know that Aaron Bonfilio is on the call today, but again, because it's proven to be a very viable transportation option in the city, but we think it could be even more. Next slide. So just when also part of my job is working on capital infrastructure projects, and it's always crazy what people will do to capital infrastructure, just from the traffic signal box, a city bench, something on the playground. And so bike share is not immune to that either. So there's like the whole sort of underworld, even when you launch the program, that to expect that these wonderful bikes may not be treated so wonderfully. And I think in time, as far as like theft protection for the bikes, it's not that they're really well made, and you couldn't just walk by the bike and really destroy it. What we're seeing are when they are vandalized, that they're being vandalized with somebody carrying very high level professional tools. But that is the thing. as well. So, but as far as like it happens, and I think if you were to launch a program in the community, it's just something that's sort of not the price of business, but it's just something, just like with anything with capital infrastructure, you need to make sure insurance and maintenance and that type of thing. Next slide. And so the we did do some investigations and ultimately received a grant to have some additional monies for low income program. So about 40% of the riders use bike share to replace a vehicle, and 60% of those riders make less than 50,000 annually. And I think I just looked on the website today, but if you are part of like CalFresh, so essentially like food stamps, you could have an annual membership for $27. So that is just amazing and the by far the lowest cost option for getting around in town. And so part of this grant is to market, to be able to market more to the lower income areas to increase that ridership. Next slide. So sorry, I think I said the acronym, but yeah, CMO is the Clean Mobility Options Voucher Pilot Program. So as we're in this pilot phase for bike share, this is sort of the next phase, because I would say that the first really couple of years was just trying to get the system in place. And now we're at the point where now we're kind of like doing the fine tuning for the program. Next slide. And then just in general, I think no matter what grant source you're working in, the low income areas, underserved, environmental justice, every grant source has a different definition. So for the definition for this particular grant source, it's all the areas in blue, which encompasses a pretty big chunk of our city. And so it's going to be really exciting to work on this next phase to increase ridership. Next slide. So again, that's just a very quick overview, but happy to answer questions, and I'm sure it's probably Gerald at the end of everybody's presentations.
Yeah, we'll have, if there's any burning questions, we'll take them, but if not, we can move on to the next presenter and then save the questions for later.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Any questions? Cool. We could save some time for the panel discussion. Our next presenter is Joanne from B-Cycle.
Hi, everyone. My name's Joanne. I'm currently operations manager, and I do quite a few things as, I guess, our acting general manager. We don't have one currently. So typically the general manager would be in my seat right now talking to you. Yeah, next slide. Thank you, Jessica, for all the info. I learned some new things just now from your presentation because I wasn't totally familiar with the pilot part of the project over the last couple years, but can talk about current operations. So yes, there is a map on our website that does give you a location of each station and the current number of bikes at each station. These bubbles are just locations. So this is kind of how I see our map on the back end. Currently, we do have 88 docks, and we recently lost, or 88 stations, and we recently lost some docks due to driver crashes. So we're down to 562 docks and 270 bikes. we lost two bikes, one earlier this year and one late last year due to theft, um, which doesn't happen quite frequently here in Santa Barbara, which we're really lucky, but it does happen. State Street is our most popular location by far. We see thousands of trips there annually. Waterfront is our second most popular, and then our least most used stations are kind of scattered around the city. There's no like one place in the city that just isn't seeing lots of ridership. It's kind of scattered all around. Next slide. So how does B-Cycle work? Um, so as Jessica said, we do have motor assist, pedal assist bikes. Our bikes do not have a throttle. You do have to pedal in order to use them. Um, so they are not like a lot of the fast e-bikes that you'll see riding around the city. They move a little bit slower, which is totally fine. Still fun to ride, and still gives you a little bit of help with the motor. Each dock uses a cell signal to communicate with our back-end system and your phone if you're using the app. It also uses a cell signal to communicate with our RFID cards, which there's an example of one here. If you don't have a smartphone or if you're in a place with poor cell signal, highly recommend using one of our RFID cards. It'll definitely be a lot quicker than trying to connect to a dock through your phone. But I also have an example of what you might see on our app here. If you were at the station that's at Garden and Ortega, which is the closest to my office, it's usually full. So on this day, it was very surprising that there's one dock open, but each dock has a number, and you'll check out a bike based on the dock number. Here's a quick view of our membership costs here in Santa Barbara. The majority of our riders live here, work here, and we see quite a low percentage of folks who are just visiting or are casual riders. Next slide. So on the day I made this, this was the number of members that we had, but the number changes quite frequently. You know, people's memberships expire, or they buy new memberships. So when I checked this morning, we were up to 650 monthly members or something like that. So that monthly members fluctuates the most. Annual members typically stays the same throughout the year. And in our B-Cycle for All program, that number typically stays the same for the year as well. And like I said, a low percentage of our riders are casual riders or they are just single 30-minute riders. We see this number spike pretty heavily throughout the summer, but for most of the year, it's 20 to 30% of daily riders. But in, say, July and August, we'll see this number like skyrocket up to closer to 40%, especially during times like 4th of July, Fiesta, the seafood festival, stuff like that, will drive up casual ridership. Next slide. I don't know if these videos will play for you, but each one of these is a video. It's just a glimpse into our website, the back end, how we manage things. So this first video on the left is kind of my dashboard, what I see when I log in, gives me a glimpse of our daily ridership, of the current status of our docks, current status of the majority of the bikes in the system. In the middle here, I have a quick view of how we manage our bikes. Each of our bikes has a status. It's docked, checked out, overdue, not available. And each bike is numbered, and I can tell you where a bike is, if it's docked, how long it's been there, who checked it out, where'd they go, how long were they riding it for, that sort of thing. And then on the right is how I manage our docks. Each dock has a very tiny battery on the inside that keeps it running. If the bike or if the dock is asleep, the battery usually lasts pretty long. So the more a dock is being used, the more checkout it gets, the quicker that little battery will die. So all these things get changed daily. We change our bike batteries daily, our dock batteries daily based on how much they're being used. Next slide. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit more detailed into the operations side of things. Currently, we have four full-time and one part-time field technician. We have three full-time mechanics. Um, on a daily basis, these people are doing things like balancing, which they drive around some vans and they might take bikes from a full station and put them at an empty station. Or if we have like really, really big stations like Amtrak or the station at Cabriya and Chapala, um, those stations don't necessarily get full, but they do have a ton of bikes. So if we need bikes somewhere else, they can be picked up from places like that, and put elsewhere. Battery swaps, like I said, um, the docks have ton of parts that need to get changed, especially in a salty, sandy environment like the waterfront. Parts need to be changed more frequently. They get rusty, they get sandy, and then they just fail over time. Um, they might do in-field repairs while they're out. And then in the shop, our mechanics spend the day working on things that can't be done in the field. So they're working on wheel repairs like spokes and hubs, maybe working on a motor, maybe working on shifters, brakes, things that just can't be done in the field very quickly with a small bunch of tools. Um, because these guys got a lot of work to do. So sometimes we just bring stuff back to the shop because they'll take too much time out in the field. Next slide. By far, our highest operational cost is personnel. We pay our staff quite well, um, and everyone who is full-time gets benefits. Full-time for us is 4 days a week. The company that owns us, Bicycle Transit Systems, operates on a 4-day work week. So all of our staff generally get a 3-day weekend every weekend, which is really nice. We also provide things like snacks. Sometimes we might do lunches if something special is going on. We provide safety resources if someone needs it or if a situation calls for it. Um, and then there's other operational costs that you got to consider with a program like this. We have to have a warehouse. You can't operate out of an office environment. Um, so thinking about rent, the cost of your utilities to charge things, because it's 24/7. We operate 365. We have staff in the field every day of the year, including Christmas, New Year's, 4th of July, all of that. But in the event that folks are working on such a holiday, they get paid time and a half. So again, personnel is our highest cost. And then for myself and the general manager, thinking of office equipment, vehicles are not cheap. Insurance, gas, leases. Um, we have a cargo bike that we sometimes use. We have company phones for staff to use, so they're not using their own personal devices. And then after our personnel costs, I would say our next highest cost would be maintaining our equipment. So bikes are quite expensive. Um, and so are docks, things like bolts that keep all of our equipment in the ground. They are cheap, but we use a ton of them. Every time we have to move a dock, bolts generally get damaged. Mother Nature takes them sometimes, and they just are lost in the ground if we can't get them out. Sometimes we put anchors in the ground, like State Street. Just about every dock on State Street is anchored in the ground, which is a whole different, more expensive process. And we break a ton of drill bits. So little things like that they definitely add up over time. We pay a monthly fee to keep every dock functioning in the same way that you pay for your cell phone every month. And then we also pay a small fee to the city, which is per bike annually. Um, and we pay for things on our back end, like customer service. Our customer service operates 7 days a week. We pay our IT folks, and we pay for the software that we use. So all that stuff comes out of our whatever revenue we make here through ridership. All of that pays for all of this. Next slide. Jessica kind of talked a little bit about this, but I will say here in Santa Barbara, things are a little bit tricky because we have something called the Historical Landmark Commission, I think it is. Um, in some cities, you can put bike share anywhere and nobody really cares. In Santa Barbara, can't be too close to things that are historic, things that are sites that folks might want to see. So while we might have stations near places where people might want to go, we can't have them directly in front of certain things, which is totally understandable. Um, and makes it so that our system, I think, looks cleaner than you might find in some cities. Um, I was recently in Denver and people kind of just like abandoned the bike share bikes and bike share scooters like anywhere. So the docked system allows you to kind of keep a certain order and keep this sort of cleaner looking. You still have access to places you want to go, but um, you definitely have to keep a certain look, which is, it makes sense. Um, and most of our stations are near public transit, near points of interest, and generally in or near dense neighborhoods. With the grant that Jessica talked about, we will be expanding to more dense neighborhoods because we are not as um, I guess you won't see us as much in the east side or the west side as we'd like to be. So we're hoping to change that with this grant. Next slide. Yeah, here's another example of needs to get a dock in the ground. You do have to leave space for pedestrian traffic, um, and a very clean looking station on your right. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, I think we might have missed one. Perfect. Okay. So, this system can't really function without stakeholders' involvement in pretty much everything that we do. Whenever we are installing a new station, we go out and we talk to folks who are in the area, especially those who will be um, directly in front of or behind the station, um, and discuss placement. And so the involvement of the community is super important. And then also there's partnerships that can grow out of simply just talking to folks. Um, we have partnerships with some hotels in the area, some schools, some business owners. We have a program that's through the library that is quite small right now, but it's honestly very well used for how small it is. Um, and nonprofits, we have partnerships with a couple nonprofits. And then, of course, um, we are nothing without the help and support of the city and county. Thank you. That's all I got for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Joanne. Great to hear about all the work you're doing to keep B-Cycle running. And with that, Aaron, are you here? Oh, yeah, there you are. I will be welcoming Aaron Bonfilo from SBCAG to talk about funding opportunities and resources.
Hi, everyone. Aaron Montley with SBCAG, the multimodal programs. Joel, can you go next slide? Thanks. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about two things, both funding opportunities that we can share with you, but also some of the latest research and some sources for guidance on design for bike share, in addition to what was mentioned earlier. Next slide. Okay, so as Jessica mentioned, the CMO grant or the Clean Mobilities Option is pretty common in terms of its usability for programs like this. In fact, it was amended over the years to specifically be available to provide first last mile or bike share, mobility, micromobility options for disadvantaged communities, which is awesome. Originally, it was going to be everything under the sun, van pool, carpool, all kinds of different programs. But there's really been a concerted effort to make sure that these types of micromobility projects are out there. There's also a handful of other state programs that I just want to make folks aware of. So some of them are competitive, some of them are formula based. Um, Looking down the list, the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, which, and granted, all the rest of these, or excuse me, the next three are funded through the GGRF, or the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which is also known as CAP, or funded through the Cap and Trade Program. There's a lot of activity at this state right now over these funds and what's going to happen with the continuing appropriations associated with making these funds available. So um, all that's to say that the final budget has not been approved yet, and what happens with cap and trade going forward is not totally known. But at the moment, the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, or AHSC, is one where you can install bike share micromobility projects in and around affordable housing or in transit-oriented developments projects as well to integrate where there is already affordable housing. You can add micromobility or other bike share type programs, van pool, carpool, bus service. In addition to that, there is the formula program LC Top, or the Low Carbon Transportation Operations Program. This is specifically a program that is available to transit operators and RTPAs, so agencies like SBCAG, SLOCOG, VCTC down in Ventura are eligible to receive these funds, and you can use them as long as you are within a walkshed of a transit system. And transit operators are more and more using these funds to implement micromobility or bike share first last mile programs. The Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program, same thing. That's a competitive program, however, and that is generally used to provide capital, not operations funding, in and around transit and rail multimodal stations. So, for example, in San Francisco, there's a handful of TIRCP projects or TIRCP projects that were implemented at BART stations, and MTC, along with some of the local partners, are using TIRCP funding to implement. I think they call it not City Ride. It's like the equivalent of the New York City bike share program in the Bay Area. And then lastly, most notable and largest and available is the ATP, or the Active Transportation Program. This is a great one. It's very competitive, and in Santa Barbara County, it became even more competitive recently as we in Santa Barbara, the South Coast, moved from being in a small metropolitan area to now a large metropolitan area, which means we compete for less funding with bigger entities across the state. There is still the large call, or the large pot, for the rest of the county, but it is a very competitive program. And as Jessica knows from many successful grants and many unsuccessful grants, sometimes you just have to keep working on your project over and over and keep submitting. And, when the time is right, hopefully you get funded. Next slide. So here's a bit about federal programs. I'll just say right off the bat that the current administration is pausing or reviewing a lot of grants that have been made using these fund types. The Transportation Alternatives Program is actually part of the statewide ATP program. So if you get enough funding from the state, oftentimes some of that is federal funding from the TA or the TAP program from the FHWA. One thing I would caution and just say that out of the gate, if you're going to use federal funds or go after federal funds, whether they're formula or discretionary, there is a ton of reporting and other additional steps required. I don't think this group is unfamiliar with NEPA or CEQA, but for example, the procurement requirements associated with federal programs are often very lengthy and very time-consuming and costly for agencies. I don't see any of our contacts here from, say, Shumash or other groups, but there is a very flexible program called the Tribal Transportation or Transit Program that provides formula funding and competitive funding to tribes around the country. And this is a good source if you have a small project or a very defined project for your region. And lastly, the discretionary grant programs listed across the bottom, AIM, EMI, IMI, and MOD, those are probably all going to go away with the next reauthorization, but provided that the budget moves forward the way it's currently anticipated from the Senate, not necessarily the House, you could see these discretionary grant programs continue. And this is a mix of both FTA and FHWA programs that are out there, but I would say that the reading on the tea leaves right now is that there's a lot of large discretionary programs that are going to go away, like capital investment grants from the FTA, for example, but that some of these formula programs are going to continue for the time being, with the noted exception of probably the carbon reduction program, as that really was focused on greenhouse gas reductions. And we see that the current administration is shifting away from that. So, for lack of a better term. But one of the pots of money here that we as agencies often overlook, and I don't see anyone from MTD on the line or transit operators, but the urbanized area formula grants for FTA, as long as you're within a 3-mile radius of a bus stop, you are technically within the bike shed of a bus stop. And you can use formula funding from the FTA, whether it's 5307 or 5310 for seniors and people with disabilities, to provide things that are associated with bike share. Now, you cannot provide the bikes themselves, but you can buy the infrastructure associated. So docks, if you're trenching to provide charging, things of that nature, that can be funded through the urbanized area grant program. Next slide. Okay. So Darrell, I know we talked that I was going to talk mostly about funding. And by the way, with regard to funding, generally speaking, if it's state or federal, it flows most often either through Caltrans or SBCAG. So if you're interested in those funds, reach out to your Caltrans district representatives to learn more, or your local RTPA or MPO as well. Now, with regard to research, there was a really thorough report put together by Caltrans or CalSTA through the Cal ITP program that's listed at the top there. They talk about everything from different business models that have succeeded and failed in different jurisdictions, why it's really important to get the scope of a project right at the outset, because you can see not necessarily scope creep, but changes in technology that have a real impact on the success of a program or the success of a jurisdiction to then compel their operator to make changes, right? If it's not in the scope or if it's not in the agreement, it's hard to be nimble. And then there's a lot of great research that's being done in this country regarding micromobility, but even more so over in Asia. So if you want to see what it looks like 10, 15 years down the line, read any number of the studies out of China that are going on right now. They're all in the journals, and they're very, very deep into everything from scooter share to bike share, and all kinds of demand modeling. That said, I found that the last link here, the legal insights for micromobility integration, to be the most important, or at least very informative for me. One of the things they focus on are both the regulatory aspects for ADA accessibility on the use of the system, but also on, of course, the right-of-way. So as Jessica was mentioning, there's right-of-way clearance that's required. But in the case of San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, there's been a number of lawsuits that have taken place where users have brought suits against the operators and against the jurisdictions in particular, especially those using federal funds, alleging that the bike share programs are not ADA accessible. And so very common in public transit is when something is inaccessible, you make an accommodation. And so there's pilot programs going on right now in the cities of Oakland, Berkeley, and elsewhere to provide adaptive bikes for bike share program. And if you recall at the first slide, there was a scene of a couple of scooters docked or looking like they were docked along the curb. Two of those were actually adaptive scooters with seats that were made available for users in addition to the existing scooters, so that if people with mobility impairment or other kind of ambulatory issues could use those scooters in lieu of standing on their own 2 feet. They can sit down and use them. So all that's to say, there are ways to address the legal challenges associated with this. I mean, never mind the Coastal Commission, but of course that's a huge issue for our area. But when it comes to regulations and the challenges that are there, I found this last paper very helpful because there's actually a checklist for municipalities when they go to implement to look at everything from ADA accessibility to Title VI compliance with language accessibility and things of that nature. And so, Joe, I think the next slide. Oh, that may be it. Okay. I'd be happy to answer any questions along with the rest of the group.
Cool. Thank you so much, Aaron. Appreciate your insight into the knowledge and research for planning and understanding more about micromobility. Now I'll take some time to answer some specific questions for Aaron, if there are any specific ones. I guess one that I had is how do you think research can help advance deploying micromobility, whether it's from understanding the local demand for a service like this or expanding an existing service?
Well, I mentioned, and Joanne probably has some insight here, but I mentioned that um, folks, a lot of the researchers um, in Asia have been focusing on like very very scientifically bound statistical analysis over demand modeling and can tell from the density of an area exactly how well or how poorly a system may do and what kind of dock configuration might be required there. So there's benefits from the research that will teach you about balancing and the staffing and things of that nature. But one of the things I thought that was very interesting from the research, the Journal of Bicycling and Micromobility has published a handful of papers on the safety aspects associated with e-bikes and bike share programs in particular, and found that bike share programs are actually safer on the whole, on average, than e-bikes. I think because of the way that at least one of the papers that I read had that insight, but that the bike share programs tend to emphasize best practices, reduce speeds, things of that nature, whereas the vast number of e-bikes on the road, they don't have the same kind of standards or controls. At least that was one of the findings. But that journal in particular has a lot of really great research, a lot that has been done in the past 2 years, which I think is important because some of this goes way back to like 2013, 2016, et cetera, before the pandemic. But
Aaron, if I
having that,
could add to that,
yeah,
just with that was something too, just kind of during this time frame when we were launching bike share was also this huge boom of popularity of e-bikes that was happening not only in our community but really across the United States. And we also received a grant just recently that we're working on called Safe Streets for All for an action plan. So we're analyzing a lot of collision statistics. And one of the things that police departments weren't necessarily coding really e-bikes until the later part of 2022. So we don't have like years and years of collision data, but that's kind of, again, I attend a lot of webinars on the topic, but what we're generally seeing right now, just on our roadway for e-bikes, they make up about 50% of bikes on our roadway, just in general. We are seeing that bicycle collisions, e-bikes is trending upwards. But again, we don't have a lot of years of data, but we are seeing that, and that the party at fault. It's now, it has always been sort of half and half, but a little bit trending on the e-bike fault. All that said, from the B-cycle bikes, with over the 2.1 million miles traveled, we have only had a few minor reported collisions. And again, B-cycle gets a little bit more data than like the rest of our e-bikes, where it is a police record. B-cycle will have if they're notified or if the bike's damaged or a person got hurt. But I think the success and why it's so low, and I think when we went to city council about, I think in 2024, 2023, I think we had about 5 e-bike related collisions, and some of them were just self-bike collisions. So again, compared to some of the other numbers, is extremely low. So I just kind of anecdotal evidence, I think, Aaron, from that report, where we are also seeing it too. And I think that biggest part is that the bikes are governed at 17 miles per hour. And I think that does make a big difference for the bikes. You also have to be over 18 years of age or older. And we're still tracking, again, for age groups as well, but that might play part of it too.
Thank you. I guess we could transition to the panel with that. I know there's some questions. Let's see what we have here. One from Derek. How much city staff time is necessary for this program? Is the program profitable, breaking even, subsidized? If so, or how much if subsidized? Do partnerships also do partnerships also equal sponsorships?
So I'll answer some of that, and then I'll pass it off to Joanne to answer some of the later part of the question. So just to get the program up and running, it really ebbed and flowed for staff time. I would say, besides myself and our transportation manager at the time, when we were going to city council just for the bike ordinances and then the setup, it kind of goes in waves, where it'd be kind of intensive for a couple weeks and then taper off. Again, for cities of our sizes, and we're, people that haven't maybe set up a system yet, we're not first adopters. So we did work with other jurisdictions that had adopted bike share programs and modeled our ordinances off of there. I'm happy to share our ordinances with Gerald, or he could post for that, just so you can see. And we had basically asked what's working, what's not, or how would we modify certain language for things. And then actually getting them in the ground, I think there was just, again, kind of an intensive effort just to kind of have the initial sighting, because you need to start to put things in operation. But it's also like judging metrics. It's you don't have a full system on day one. Like it takes like a couple of years just to kind of expand the system. So from that standpoint, so kind of staff heavy initially, not so staff heavy now. I think the next push for the clean mobility options for the low income areas, that will now be a little bit staff heavy just initially, and then it won't. So ebbs and flows. And then I think, Joanne, if you want to take the profitability part, I know when we launched the program, it was upfront cost. B-Cycle had paid for all the infrastructure. That was all part of the contract. We did pay for if something needed to be relocated or something, those types of things, then the city would pay for that. But initially, all of that, B-Cycle had provided that.
Yeah, thank you. So to answer the question, is the program profitable, breaking even, subsidized? Most bike share is not profitable and has to be subsidized in some shape or manner. Um, Currently, it changes month to month. So we have some months when we are really profitable, and some months when we are not. We do have some sponsorships. We have some agreements with like SBCC, so some hotels that provide us with some stream of revenue, which is like super helpful. And then of course, when we do things like partner with the city on grants of this size, that's also pretty helpful. Um, but in general, I will say bike share, including this one, is not profitable. So you do have to find some way to subsidize the system. Our membership, the cost is, I would say, reasonable for the area, but for a lot of people, it's quite high, which is why we do have those lower income programs. Um, and right now, they're not as well used as we would like. Um, and so I mean, part of the grant is to provide us with funding so we can do more outreach. Um, on that note, kind of want to answer Peter's question since it's related. Um, we are working with Move Santa Barbara in order to do some outreach, as well as working with the city. Um, there are certain requirements for the grant. We can't really do much outsourcing. Um, and so since the city is um, I forget the terminology, but the city won the grant and we are the partners or the executors, sort of, because without our program, there would be no winning of the grant. And so within that partnership, we can do some outreach. So actually, I have a meeting that just started where we are going to talk about outreach for just that. So I can answer your question, Peter, at a later date in more or in greater detail. Um, and I think Jessica can answer the second part of Peter's question in regards to service on the Mesa. Currently, a lot of sidewalks on the Mesa do not meet the requirements for a station, which would then include enough room for pedestrians to walk between property lines and the station. And so that's generally the reason why we don't have too many stations along the Mesa right now. But Jessica's working on a program to change that. So it's going to be very
Yeah,
exciting.
part two, I think a lot of the initial siting again was siting obviously at important destinations, but also kind of in line with our bike infrastructure and facilities, directing riders to sort of the safe routes in the city. So one big issue area of Cliff Drive, it's a Vision Zero priority corridor due to the high speeds and a level of collision. So citing a bunch of docks in an area that we know is very collision prone is something that's a no-go, but we have a big ATP project that will be having a separated bike path for all of Cliff Drive. And that along Cliff Drive is 3 elementary schools and Santa Barbara City College. And so that is just going to be a complete game changer for the area. So we are in a design, hoping to go to final design in the next couple of months. So that's something that we are working on and making sure spatially that we can, in the new areas and sidewalks, that we have plenty of room to put bike stations in what will now be a safe facility for biking. So that's why you kind of see the down car, the biggest part, and then in the waterfront, and then our bike infrastructure starts to trail off a little bit. But there's lots of game-changing projects coming online in the next few years. So we expect to see a lot more bike stations.
Cool. With that, I know it's 4 o'clock and we're a little bit over time, so I see some questions. I think we could follow up them after this conversation. So with that, I think we'll come to this to a close. So thank you everybody for attending. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And please visit our website for the recording and look out for the email for the recording as well. So. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for attending. Bye, y'all.